All right, we are live.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our last meeting of calendar 2025 for the Group Insurance Commission. I hope everyone is enjoying the busy holiday season with Hanukkah well underway and the new year just around the corner. So I'm Valerie Sullivan, Chair of the Group Insurance Commission, and I am joined by an esteemed and wonderful board. So let me introduce them. I have with me Bobby Kaplan, Vice Chair. I have Dana Sullivan, who is representing ANF. I have Rebecca Butler, who is representing the Division of Insurance. I have Toby Choate. I have Kristen Pepin. I have Darren Ambler, our newest member. I have Tamara Davis, Jane Edmonds, Eileen McEnany, Anna Sinenko, Catherine West, Jerzino Gerard, Martin Curley, and Dean Robinson. So it's great to have everybody here, and I see you all on camera, and it's wonderful to have you here. So at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Matt to give us a rundown of today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to see everyone. Thank you for joining us. If we can go to the next slide for the agenda. We will be presenting initially. Our first item will be reviewing our preliminary cost increase for fiscal 27. So this is our very early projection and the starting point for our decisions over the coming months. We want to also continue the discussion with the Commission regarding how to balance GIC member benefits with the pressures that are emerging on the Commonwealth's budget. We will, in that context, continue the discussion around plan design changes using the tools that are available to us today. And we will hear from Margaret Anschutz, our Director of Health Policy and Analytics, who will present on lessons learned from other states in efforts to address kind of core cost drivers of rising health insurance costs, healthcare costs, and how we can apply those or start to think about how to apply those here in the Commonwealth. And we'll round it out with our CFO, Jennifer Hewitt, who will present the CFO report for the current fiscal year. So with that, Madam Chair, hand it back to you for the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our November meeting.
So moved.
So Bobby is making the motion. Who's seconding?
Second.
That
was me.
Okay, Dana. All right, Dana. So Dana Sullivan has seconded. So I'm going to ask Andrew to roll call. I'm an aye. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Kaplan?
Aye.
Designee Sullivan?
Aye.
Designee Butler?
Aye.
Commissioner Ambler?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Choate?
Approved.
Commissioner Curley?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Edmonds?
Aye.
Commissioner Guerin?
Aye.
Commissioner McEnany?
Aye.
Commissioner Pepin?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sinenko?
Aye.
And Commissioner West?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone. And so we'll move. Go ahead, Matt, and let's go to the first agenda item, please. So we're going to review the executive director's report. Matt, you might be on mute.
My apologies.
I had a couple of questions, as you probably figured out, regarding the municipalities. So if you're going to double click on that, I'd love to hear it. I'm sure others as well.
Yep, that is my intent. That is the really the item for me to highlight. So December 1st was the statutory deadline for municipal entities to notify the GIC that they intend to join, will be joining for the upcoming plan year. In total, we received 13 letters of intent from entities wishing to join. Again, this is for coverage effective July 1st, 2026. This is the largest number of municipal entrants to the GIC since municipal health reform in 2011. So we're very excited to be welcoming and working with these 13 entities. Among the 13, there are 8 that are member units of the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust that we have spoken with you about in prior meetings. Given this large uptick in interest, the GIC is moving forward with group onboarding. So we're essentially doing a kickoff meeting for all of the municipal entities that have submitted their LOI. And this meeting will be occurring about 3 weeks earlier than we would typically start these engagements. We want to make sure that we get a head start on our end, but also give these entities as much time as possible to conduct the work that's necessary on their end to ensure a smooth entry into the GIC. So it's a big year for us on the muni side. I would say I'm not super surprised at that, given the pressures that municipal and other budgets are facing when it comes to healthcare costs. I will also note that we did not have any of our current municipalities seek to exit the GIC. So we're continuing to perform our statutory function and be an option and a high value option to municipalities. So we're very excited. It's been a tremendous amount of work. I will say I'm thrilled that we have had Morgan Simcoe as our government affairs manager, who's really jumped in and done a tremendous amount of work working directly with these municipalities. It's been a lot of work, but we're doing very well on our end. Happy to pause for questions on that.
I don't see any. I am thrilled to see some municipalities joining. Does feel a little slower than it could be. Do you have a sense of what it would take for more municipalities to join?
Well, I think the continued pressure, I think the continued pressure on municipal budgets is going to likely continue. So I think we're going to continue to see an escalating interest over the coming years. It's not a small thing for a municipality to make the change to join the GIC. It's a great deal of work on their end. So we do know that, there's a certain stickiness that that can, like, to their current approach to health insurance, that can sometimes be a challenge to overcome. But we see this as this is a significant number, and this comes on the heels of us bringing on an entity mid-year for January 1st that we had not done in a long, long time. So I think this is going to continue to escalate.
Good. All right, that's helpful. Eileen, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I do, thanks. I just had a quick question. I should know this, but I don't. When a municipality joins the GIC, do they do it for a minimum number of years, or can it switch year to year?
I'll kick that one to Andrew to make sure we answer that correctly.
When a municipality joins, they are committed for 3 years. Upon renewal, they're committed for a minimum of 2 and can renew for as many years as they'd like.
Thank you.
Do you think that renewal time, that commitment for a full 3 years, oftentimes skews them to feel like that commitment is too long, so they don't want to join?
I don't think so. It's necessary for us for purposes of smoothing the risk profile. Because we're insurer of last resort, we need that level of commitment to be able to handle the influx.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I would
no,
say
I
this is
agree.
a fairly common feature of joint purchasing entities. And if I'm not mistaken, well, I don't want to speculate.
No, so we don't
Yeah.
have to get wrapped around the axle on this. It just was a question, only a question. I just am curious, as I have been for many years, how more municipalities aren't just jumping in to join us. With 351, we at least, and I know there are more different entities. What would it take for us to have that breadth of coverage so that we are, our superpower is more than, 440,000 lives? What impact could we have? So that's all. We talk about it almost regularly, and I'm glad to see that we are having additional growth. So thank you. Mara, your hand is up. You can go ahead.
So, may I suggest that maybe the timing is too short? Because if what I'm hearing is correct, that it takes quite a while for a municipality to come on board and to change their systems and get their members used to a whole new entity. By the time they are used to it, 1 year has gone by, most likely. And so I thought maybe it should be a 5-year term. It should not be a 3-year term. That's something I think we could sort of float out to the municipalities and see if it would have made a difference if it was a 5-year term originally. Again, that's just a thought that I had based on Valerie's discussion of making it shorter.
Well,
Yeah, I love it.
if I may, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that we cut to the chase. If we have a good question like that, why not just simply ask
Yeah, sure.
and get some data rather than opine about what we think it might be? Why don't we find out?
Yep.
Sounds like a good follow-up. So we'll look forward to hearing that January or February from our government affairs team. Bobby, I see you have a question. You're on mute.
Sorry, sorry about that. To Jane's point, I was just going to make a comment that I think a lot has to do with municipalities thinking that they're going to lose their independence, right? Regarding plan design, it's a huge issue, I think, for municipalities or for their employees who currently have more, let's say they have more say over which carriers. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think municipalities may feel that that's part of the reason, more so than the timing. That's all I wanted
Thank
to
you, Bobby. And
say.
we'll drill into it a little bit more. So we probably need to move, but I appreciate everybody's enthusiasm along with mine to try to build our group numbers, and we'll definitely come back with that. So back to you, Matt.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think at this point, I wanted to just turn it over to our Deputy Executive Director, Erica Schiavelli, to update the Commission on our coming public information sessions.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can everybody hear me okay? Great, excellent. I've been having some headphone troubles this morning. So we're excited to announce our annual public information sessions for 2026. As usual, we're doing them virtually. We get a ton of engagement doing them virtually, much more than we've gotten in the past in doing them in person. And let's see here, we have 3 sessions per usual. 2 of them are going to be offered on Tuesday, January 27th, sorry. And the last one on Thursday, January 29th. We have spread them out over a series or over a bunch of different times. So we have a noon time, a 6 p.m. and a 9 a.m., really just trying to get folks or give folks the opportunity to join at a time that, works for their schedules. If folks aren't able to join live, these will all be recorded and posted on our YouTube page. We have an option during these webinars or information sessions where folks can ask live question and answers, or live questions with live answers from our staff. And that all kind of populates right on the screen for folks to follow along. And it's a really good opportunity for folks to ask their questions about what's coming for the next plan year. So registration is open already. You can go to mass.gov/GIC and you can register for one of these webinars. We encourage you to register just for one because there is slightly limited space. We do have overflow available for viewing, but encourage you to register for just one because all of the sessions will be the same. So wanting folks to register as soon as they can, and we look forward to seeing you all and happy to take any questions.
I don't see any, but I want to applaud the early scheduling of this and the ability to announce it. So thank you, really well done. So let's get as many of our constituents to attend. For those of you who represent constituents, Bobby and the likes of the rest of you, if possible, get these dates out to your teams so they know.
So, Erica, I just have a question regarding the messaging. So, is notice going to be like emailed to state employees, or how is that going to work? And my second question is it 90 minutes long like it usually is? Is that the length of the session?
Yeah, so they will be 90 minutes, and we add, so it takes us about 45 minutes to an hour to get through the presentation. And then we want to leave ample time for questions. So sometimes we don't use the whole 90 minutes, but we want to make sure it's there because there are some sessions where the question and answer function on Zoom is just kind of going crazy. And so we want to make sure we give enough time for that. And then your other question was about how it's going to be kind of pushed out to folks.
Yeah.
So typically do an email out to our GIC coordinators and ask them to share with their agencies. We also will post on our website with an alert, post on our social media accounts, and really just kind of pushing it out to make sure everybody is aware that these sessions are happening. We also typically work with mass retirees to get it into their newsletter, or at least kind of a communication that they send out along with a newsletter through HRD. So we try to get it out there as many avenues as possible, as well as getting it out early here today. So it's available for folks.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And we'll post it on our, web pages, also the state pages. We'll make sure that everyone is informed.
I'd be happy to get you this graphic with the link, so that way.
Oh, that'd be great. If you could, that'd be
Maybe
terrific.
to everyone, Erica.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Happy to do that.
All right, thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good work. I love that we're so ahead. The more of our constituents who can be part of these, I believe in education for our membership, and these sessions are fantastic. And I love that they reach so many people. So thank you, Erica and team. I know it's a team. It's always a team. All right, let's keep moving so we stay on track. Maybe give you a few minutes back during these very busy times. So welcome. Not probably going to be a feel-good session, but Brian from WTW, do you want to go ahead and take us through what next year might look like?
Sounds good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Would love to echo your sentiments. Hope everybody has been able to take some time to enjoy the holiday season. As you said, not necessarily a fun topic, so I will try not to be a Scrooge here. Just to introduce myself a bit. My name is Brian Stitzel. I'm an actuary and senior director in WTW's Financial Actuarial and Analytics Group. Specific to the GIC, I oversee the financial team here at WTW, responsible for setting the budget rates, commonly referred to as premium equivalents, or specifically today talking about the budget rates for the upcoming FY27 plan year. While this is my first year with the GIC, I am vastly approaching 40 years experience in the industry. I know I only look 12. I do have public sector experience. So for the past 4 years or so, I've been the lead actuary on the state of Delaware group health insurance plan. And a long time ago in a former life, I worked on rate setting and reserving for the New York State health insurance plan. So I do have public sector experience. If we flip to the next slide, and certainly feel free to interrupt at any time with questions. So obviously today we're here to talk about the preliminary increases for the upcoming plan year FY27. Again, specifically to the premium equivalents, and just in terms of level setting, what do we mean by a budget rate or a premium equivalent? What that represents is the expected total cost to the plan, not taking into account what members may or may not pay in out-of-pocket expenses at point of care, things like deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance. So the total cost to the plan, covering claims, expenses, fees, potentially offset by, and specifically offset by, in the case of the GIC plans, pharmacy rebates and EGWIP revenues, which are components covered by the federal government that come into the plan, offsetting the cost of your prescription drug plan for Medicare participants, commonly referred to as an EGWIP. In total, the majority of the GIC plans are self-funded. So outside of the one Medicare Advantage plan insured through point 32, all of the remaining GIC plans are self-funded or self-insured. What this means is that you are ultimately on the hook for the risk of actual experience. So while we're setting budget rates or premium equivalents that are forecasting what we expect the total cost of the program to be, you are on the hook for the risk for actual experience being higher or lower than what we project. The process that we take in order to develop and forecast these budget rates, we work in close partnership with the GIC health plans. We collect historical claims information, member data, enrollments, high cost claimant information, and relative to assumptions, we collect from the health plan partners their expectations of future growth in healthcare, medical, and prescription drug expenses beyond the base period of the data that we're collecting. So in general, for FY27, we're relying heavily on FY25 actual claims experience, and then relying on the carrier's expectations of how that experience is expected to grow over the course of FY26 and ultimately into FY27. So we flip to the next slide. So every year, WTW conducts what's called the Best Practices in Healthcare survey. As part of that survey, we're polling organizations relative to what their recent, expected, current, and projected future year-over-year increases in healthcare expenses are expected to be. So if you look at the line and bar chart on the left-hand side, if you look at that top blue line, that represents what the organizations either have experienced or are expecting to experience in year-over-year growth in their healthcare plans. And what you can see is over the past few years, 24, 25, and 26, organizations are experiencing higher year-over-year increases than we've seen in at least the last decade. And it's getting worse, right? So the top line again represents expected growth in healthcare expenses before any plan changes. So before any considerations for things you might do to increase co-pays, modify co-insurance, increase deductibles, things like that. So it's just the true underlying growth in healthcare expenses. And you can see that number going up over the past few years from 7% to roughly 8% to now more than 9%. The bars, the gray bars below it, represent those same expectations just after any additional plan changes that organizations might make. So in general, we historically see about a 1% difference between those two numbers. Specific to the public sector, we would generally expect the public sector to run worse than these averages, simply because in general in the public sector, plans tend to be richer in terms of design, so more valuable to the member. And in general, we tend to see, I think we lost the screen share, generally see older ages, different demographic makeups of participants covered in the public sector. Did I lose the screen share? I seem to have lost the
Yeah,
the
you did.
presentation on my end.
We'll bring it back up.
Thanks.
I think we lost the person who was presenting. So give me just a moment here.
Sure. Just continuing that thread while the presentation is coming back up, and by way of certain benchmarks too. I know in the past we've talked about similar type of experience and rate increases in both the federal employee benefits plan and in the Massachusetts merged market, seeing somewhat similar experiences there too going into 2026. The merged market in 25 saw an average rate increase, obviously some plans being higher and some plans being lower, but an average rate increase of roughly 8%. For 2026. That shot all the way up to 11.7%. And in the federal employee benefits plan, the average increase in 25 was 11.2%, and now again in 2026, it's still at a high of about 10.2%. Off to the right here on this slide, you can see basically the laundry list of key drivers behind why we're seeing such large increases. The top two ultimately being pharmacy spend, in particular spend on GLP-1 medications, particularly for weight loss, and then high cost claimant information specific to the GIC plans. Not surprisingly, it's basically your top two as well. High cost claimants. What do we mean by high cost claimants? These are essentially individuals who have claims in any given plan year in excess of a certain threshold, and typically we benchmark against claims in excess of $100,000. Specific to the GIC, on the medical plan side, from FY24 to FY25, you actually saw a slight dip in the number and dollars on the medical plan side relative to participants with claims in excess of $100,000. And not surprisingly, we saw some gains come through on the medical claim side in FY25 relative to what was expected coming out of FY24. On the flip side, the GIC plan saw a huge spike in high cost claimants on the prescription drug side, nearly doubling. And we're talking about, roughly only 1% of the population generating close to $1 billion in claims. So again, 1% of your population generating, upwards of 25% of your overall claim expense. And like I said, we saw a big spike in high cost claimants on the prescription drug side, and also have seen greater than expected increases in utilization of GLP-1s for weight loss. And those are the two primary drivers.
Yeah, and Brian, thank you. I did see you had your hand up, Toby. Did you get your question answered? Toby? How about Eileen? You have a question. We'll give you a chance to catch your breath, Brian. You're giving us a lot of good data.
I think Dean
Thank,
has his hand up too, just to flag that.
thank you. So Brian, I have a question. The top drivers of healthcare costs 1, 2, and 3. There seems to be a lot of overlap in my mind. Like for GLP-1s, typically, or it used to be, people with diabetes, a chronic condition, high cost claimants typically would be folks with multiple like comorbidities or whatever.
Yep.
Often which are chronic conditions. And so I'm just wondering kind of how you tease out or define 1, 2, and 3, because they all seem to be interrelated to me.
You're right. They are somewhat overlapping. Certainly, as you pointed out, people with diabetes or people with obesity do have significant comorbidities, and certainly play a big portion of, or at least a subset of the portion of the population relative to high cost claimants. A lot more goes into, call it the bucket of high cost claimants. Sometimes there are just things that happen in the, premature births, a car accident, a heart attack, versus things that are more predictable out of the population that tends to be less healthy. So there certainly is an overlap. High cost claimant experience, while some of it can be predictable, to my point a few minutes ago, some of it is not predictable. And just as your high cost claimant experience goes, so does the overall experience of your plan from year to year. And we just seem to see not only more volatility in the number of high cost claimants in a particular plan, but the trend is skewing towards the good side of the equation as opposed to the positive side of the equation, that we're just seeing year over year so many more high cost claimants in terms of both number and average cost. And then just on the prescription drug side, specific to your experience, right? I pointed out that your prescription drug high cost claimant population and spend has gone up significantly. A lot of that is just due to the industry and the market itself, right? These new drugs that are coming out that are treating, in some instances, curing diseases that come with significantly high price tags. Some of these gene therapy drugs have a single dose price tag in the $2, $3, $4 million range. So that
Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
Yeah. Toby, your hand is back up, so go ahead. You have the floor.
I'm sorry for the I received a phone call. Just curious. I mean, where did the unit costs come in, or does it underlie many of these drivers with the unit costs?
So a subset of call it the buildup of trend, the expected year over year increases, is a mix of price inflation or unit cost, which I think is what you're getting at,
Yes.
meaning how much the provider charges for a particular service. And then on top of that, there is increases in utilization of services, change in the mix of services. So sometimes there are new and advanced technologies that come out that replace the services that were done previously, which doesn't necessarily represent either an increase in utilization or an increase in price. It's just replacing a less expensive service with a new, advanced, more expensive service. So it's a combination of all of those things that are building blocks that total up to these 7, 8, 9% numbers that we've been talking about.
Okay, thanks.
And the underlying expectations of all of those things, including the price, and specifically the prices that are negotiated between your health plan partners and the providers, are factored into the trend assumptions that we receive from the health plans relative to their expectations going forward.
While you think, can I ask a follow-on question?
Sure.
What's the history of the health plans bringing us prices that, are they going up? They reflect the 10% increase or the 8 or 9% increase, or are they kind of less, 4 or 5%? Or, I mean, how would you characterize what they're bringing us for price increase?
We can take that back. I know that the GIC staff does an annual review, which drills down to both the health plans and I think even individually some of the specific provider hospitals relative to year-over-year changes in price growth. So I certainly don't want to speak out of school, but it's certainly, I believe, has been running in the 4, 5, 6% range. But let's take that back and get specific information for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Toby. Go ahead, Dean Robinson.
Yeah, just a clarification. Oh, geez. Could you just tease out the difference again between high cost claimants and the pharmacy cost? I mean, this is building on a earlier question that 1, 2, and 3 kind of go together, but could you just give like 3 sentences to tease out what you said? You had said, I think, 1% of the population generating like $1 billion of claims. So would that be high cost claimants as separate from pharmacy cost?
Sure. So yes, it's 1% of the population. So call it, roughly 3,000-4,000 individuals, members out of, the more than 300,000 members covered under the plans, generating roughly, again, $1 billion in claim expenses. Solely individuals who individually have either medical expenses, prescription drug expenses, or both in excess of $100,000 individually in that particular year. Specific to the pharmacy spend side of the equation and the GLP-1 side of the equation, there are many individuals who utilize the pharmacy benefit and generate significant pharmacy spend that don't fall into the bucket of high cost claimants. I talked a little bit earlier about, new prescription drugs hitting the market, specialty medications hitting the market every day. These come with high price tags, but certainly a lot of them don't come with the price tag that is greater than $100,000. GLP-1s, for example, while they are expensive, and a lot of people use them, and a lot of people within the GIC plans use them, they run gross before pharmacy rebates run roughly $1,000 a month, a little bit more than $1,000 a month. So, for example, individuals taking GLP-1s for weight loss, spending roughly $12,000 to $15,000 a year, much less than $100,000. So potentially outside of the high cost claimant bucket, assuming for a second that they're not having other significant healthcare expenditures, but yet generating significant year-over-year increases in costs to the GIC plans because more and more and more people are picking on GLP-1s for weight loss. Just as an example, I'll give you another data point around GLP-1s. Again, focusing on the weight loss side of the equation, not the treatment or use of other GLP-1s for treatment against diabetes. The GIC health plans expenditures on GLP-1 for weight loss, which again falls into the pharmacy bucket, has gone up nearly 5-fold in the past 2 plan years. So roughly $60 million or $66 million in gross spend in FY24, and upwards projected of more than $300 million in gross spend in FY26, and then again expected to increase significantly going into FY27. So 2 separate and distinct buckets of people, just picking on a subset of the pharmacy side of the equation.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Sure.
Anna, I think you had your question next.
Thank you. This is really helpful, and I just wanted to make 2 comments. One is, I wonder if the number 4, inflation on the top drivers of health costs is sort of the unit cost question that Toby was asking about. So that's like the price growth piece. Yes. So that's number 4. And then I was also just going to comment that this fact that, like, 1% of the population is responsible for over 20% of the spending, and I think often like 5% is responsible for 50% of the spending is very common. It's a common pattern across commercial populations. And so I think it's not like a unique GIC
Oh,
challenge,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
It's like a everyone
It,
challenge, and it's a real
it,
challenge, but it's sort of it's a problem generally, yeah, or a
yeah,
challenge, financial
it's
challenge.
yeah, it's absolutely not unique to the GIC plans or the public sector. It's a challenge that all plan sponsors are facing, and it's a challenge that is getting worse. I mean, you can see in the middle of this slide, it talks about the fact that in 2024, 51% of organizations were expected to exceed budget, with 31% expecting to have met budget. So call it more than 80% of organizations expecting to be at or worse than budget, leaving a small slice expecting to be better than budget. And that variance to budget on average was 4.5 points, which is huge and mostly driven by that subset of the population that you're talking about. And the equation's getting worse. If you flip to the next slide, similarly for 2025, that 81, 82% number has now jumped to 92% for all industries. And wow, it's almost near 100% in the public sector relative to, expectations to being at or worse than budget. So it's a problem that's getting worse, not getting better. Now, honestly, a lot of this is exacerbated by the GLP-1 phenomenon and the just skyrocketing overnight growth in utilization and cost.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Hey, Bobby, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. This was, I had a question for the prior slide, which is, I just wanted, Brian, if you could explain the distinction between cancer and oncology, which are separated out in the third highest driver. I was curious what was meant by that.
Honestly, I'd have to go back to the team and get the specific definitions. I would interpret it as just more broadly the overall indications of cancer as opposed to specific, generally prescription drug and invasive treatments on the oncology side relative to treating the cancers, but we can certainly take that back and get you a
I'd
more
appreciate that
clarified
because,
definition of the two.
yeah, because my understanding of oncology is the treatment or the diagnosis, the treatment, like it's, so I don't
kind
know
of
why
one and the
cancer.
same.
I was
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's probably just an expansion of the group into a few words as opposed to just the overall treatment of cancer, but we can get you a specific answer to that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can tell, Brian, that we want to all drive into what's driving these
100%.
healthcare costs.
Yeah.
And let's try to fix it, right? But some of these costs are hard to suss out. And I think the commissioners appreciate your attention to detail, but also I feel like we would like these drivers to be a little bit more clean. So we might have some levers to implement that stop the growth, and maybe that's possible, maybe it's not. So let's keep going. Oh, I see Darren, you have a question, and then we'll move to the next slide after Darren's question.
It was actually just a comment that might help clarify the oncology and cancer. I know in some cases it includes the survivorship part of it. So in a lot of cases where somebody is terminal, there is a survivor period that is very expensive to treat, and it's more of that those drugs and those things that are considered oncology, but not necessarily cancer treatments anymore. So it gets grouped in. I know that term gets used for that too.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. That's very helpful, at least for me. So thank you. All right, Brian, let's keep moving. Keep us on track. Thank
Sure,
you.
yeah. Want to be
Great.
respectful of time. Maybe we flip to the last slide here. Sort of cut to the chase, right? So on a preliminary basis for FY27, call it status quo plans to plans. We're currently estimating the FY27 increase for the GIC plans at an average of 10.9%. The rating that we do, the forecasting that we do, is done on a plan by plan basis utilizing their own experience. So some of the plans will see increases greater than the 10.9%, and some will see increases lower than the 10.9%, but the 10.9% represents the overall weighted average increase based on expected enrollments by plan. We can bookend that, basically at a range of 8.9% to a high of 12.9%. We're still in the process of finalizing pricing assumptions, specifically relative to trend, GLP-1 expectations. We're continuing to monitor experience as it emerges into FY26 to see if any updates on these estimates are needed, and do not reflect any potential plan changes that the GIC may implement for the upcoming plan year.
All right. Thank you, Brian. This was well done.
Thank you.
Pithy, but informational. So thank you. I don't see any more questions, so we can keep moving. Thank you. Matt, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Bear with me just for a moment. All right, so here we move on to a continuation of a discussion from our November commission. You'll recall that we departed from our typical timelines to begin this discussion early, given that this is shaping up to be a very challenging budget year. And we wanted to preview steps that the GIC may be required to take in that context. So we were joined then by Chris Marino from A&F, who shared the pressures that the Commonwealth is under and the administration is under as they work to create a balanced budget. The governor will be filing the budget, we expect, on January 28th. So we have been working closely with our colleagues at A&F. And at that November meeting, we provided an overview of the levers at our disposal to produce near-term budget savings, all in the form, or most in the form, of plan design options, and how these could impact our GIC strategic priorities. That was a very good discussion with Chris, but it meant that we didn't really have a lot of time to spend on the plan design options, and we had several questions from commissioners. So what we want to do today is to provide a few answers to those questions today, but also leave more time to get additional feedback and guidance from the commission as we proceed. We will return in January with additional detail as we close in on a game plan for plan design. So I'll just start by answering some of those questions before I open it up to the floor for further questions and feedback. So if we can move to the next. Yeah.
Dana, did you want to have the floor here?
Yeah, if you don't mind, thank you for reminding us on what Chris said. And I just want to ground the commissioners a little bit in some budget things that have happened since we met last. So earlier this week, there was the consensus revenue hearing, which is the beginning of the consensus revenue process that allows us to set what we think the tax collections are going to be for FY27 that we can use to build the budget. And we heard from a field of experts. The forecasts range from 2.5% to a little over 7%, with the average being around 3.5%. And so obviously the presentation we just had from WTW was not, was significantly higher than that 3.5%. And so there are pressures that spending wants to grow more than we have available revenue. And so I would just ask that you all keep that in mind as we continue to evaluate the levers available to the GIC.
Yeah, that's a big gap. So let's hear what Margaret has to say to help us bridge that gap. So thank you, Dana. We've got some work to do, and I know our commissioners are ready to get that work done. So thanks, Margaret. Thrilled to see you here. Laura.
Thanks. Actually, I think Matt is going to cover the first part of this presentation.
Yeah, sorry for that. I was on mute saying the same thing. Before we kick it to Margaret, we want to continue the plan design discussion. So if we can move to the next slide. So these are the questions I would ask you to keep in mind as we continue to go through the deck here. We want to get your sense of what principles we should follow as we prioritize these measures, and if there are additional strategies that you would like the commission to consider. So bear those in mind as we go through. If we can go to the next slide. So here, these again are the same slides that we used in the November meeting. Two of the plan design options here on this page that we got questions on, I think from Vice Chair Kaplan, was regarding data for utilization, specifically of urgent care copays that relate to urgent care and ER. While we don't yet have the number by members impacted, we do have the overall number of visits, just to give a general picture, but we do expect the numbers here to be therefore smaller than the number of impacted members would be less than the actual number of visits. So for the ER copay, again, we are modeling here increasing the $100 copay to $150. The claim count for that that we project is about 58,000 claims, so 58,000 visits. And for the urgent care copay, increasing it from $20 to $30 would impact about 91,000 claims. So we want to provide you data when you've asked us for data, so I want to provide that to you here today as we continue on. So I won't speak to the other ones, the other plan design changes here. We did walk through them. And maybe what we can do is I'll walk through the deck and note areas where we have more to say or questions to answer, and then we can open it up for a broader discussion. So if we can go to slide 15, excuse me, next slide. So I don't think we had questions here. I did just want to note on the top item, so increasing out-of-network coinsurance for plans that cover out-of-network services. So these are our PPO, POS type plans that have an out-of-network benefit. Today, those are subject to a 20% coinsurance. The proposal here is to increase that to a 40% coinsurance. We did note, and I don't know if I spoke to it in the last meeting, the flag on impact on behavioral health, because we have significant utilization of out-of-network services, particularly for in the substance use space of out-of-network providers. So it's an area where producing savings here not only increases the member portion of the cost, but that is particularly true in the behavioral health space.
And Matt, if I could clarify, if I could clarify, it's less the substance use disorder out of networks, which exist, but we're pretty careful about keeping the highest quality SUD intense acute providers in network and having the others out of network, and we want to stick with that. But it's more the therapy visits. We know that a lot of therapists don't take health insurance because they don't have to, and they can be reimbursed directly by members. So there's a lot of out-of-network utilization in that space in particular, and that is who we're concerned with this particular benefit change hitting.
Thank you for the clarification. I'd like to go on to the next slide. I don't know if we had questions to respond to here. This was the increase, two options here to increase the medical deductible. So I'll move to the next slide on surviving spouses. So there were two questions here that we got. One was around surviving spouse. So that is at the bottom of this slide. Today we have 10% member contribution to premium for a surviving spouse, whereas in many cases we have the decedent subscribers contribution was more, so 20 or 25%, or actually 10, 15, 20, 25%. So the proposal was to bring those up to match the decedent's contribution ratio. So the question that we got was about the number of surviving spouses that would be impacted. So this proposal would impact spouses of state retirees, not municipal retirees, as municipalities in the GIC, they determine their own contribution ratios. So the anticipated population that would be affected here is a little over 8,000 state employee surviving spouses, potentially an additional 500 or so survivors of retired municipal teachers. And then I think the last item we wanted
Matt,
to, yes,
can I jump in? I just have a question. Have we ever, so you said there's about 8,000 in that group, so that's a critical mass that's large enough to measure. Have we ever measured the claims on that segregated group? Probably not. I'm just putting it out there that it would be an interesting data point to be able to show that my bet is that group, the claims incurred are much higher than the average across the board. I mean, typically spouses are higher anyway. But when it comes into a surviving spouse, choosing this over other options they may have, typically they're going to take this more often when they really need it. So just a thought.
Yep, good point. Thanks, Darren.
And if we are going to look at that, do we have the capabilities to look at it? Do they use us as primary when they could be using Medicare as primary? It would be helpful if you are going to drill into that, and it is something we could flex for saving money. Let's do a real deep dive in those folks, because if they're Medicare eligible, and you guys know this better than I do, but let's just drill into that. That's a good point, Darren. Thank you.
Someone else have a question, or should I move
Bobby,
on to?
do you want to ask your question now? Is this?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
It's regarding the prior slide, which is regarding the mental health and substance use. Do we know how many people are sort of using the out of network for mental health services?
I can take that question. Bobby, I've requested disruption reports for all of these benefit changes, and we'll have that at the next commission meeting.
Okay, thank you, Margaret.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Emily, did you want to ask a question, Emily? No.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I saw your hand up. All right, let's keep moving.
All right, so the last item I wanted to touch on also on this slide relates to GLP-1 coverage. So as commissioners know, because we've talked about it throughout the fall, we are implementing the Vita Health program on January 1st of this year. We received a number of questions in the last commission meeting about looking for data on that. Of course, with the program launching next month, we don't yet have data to provide, but we do look forward to sharing progress on that front after implementation. I know we had several requests for that as we were considering Vita. So we don't have a lot to say there, but I do want to address just a broader question around how coverage across the market for these drugs to treat obesity continues to evolve. So it is certainly true that there have been there's been retreat in Massachusetts and elsewhere for coverage for these drugs, but there's been a recent survey that WTW conducted of health plan sponsors that I think is noteworthy. So 57% of employers do cover GLP-1s for weight loss in 2025, and that's actually an increase of 5% from 2024. Though 9% of employers who are covering it today are considering removing coverage. So that just the general picture is one of fluidity and change. Among employers surveyed, coverage was actually more likely in large employers. So, our comparators, these are employers with 25,000 or more employees. 65% of those plan sponsors continue to cover GLP-1s, though 11% of employers have removed coverage in the last year. So, and another 19% are considering removing coverage. So this continues to be very dynamic. I will just note too here, when it comes to VITA, that the implementation of those programs by health plan sponsors that continue to cover the drugs, that is increasing pretty significantly. The percentage of employers that implement these programs doubled from 14% to 25%, well, not doubled, increased from 14 to 25% coming into this year. But 46% of employers who are covering GLP-1s are considering doing that sort of thing for the coming year. So very dynamic space here, and wanted to provide that context to the Commission. So with that, I want to stop talking. We want to listen more here. I would just, end, I think, here with where Dana chimed in at the beginning, that we're, the budget challenge is real. We've been asked to do our part at the GIC to help prepare a responsible budget. That being said, the plan design and premium rates are ultimately the Commission's decision. So the feedback that you give us is really helpful as we start to prepare for the next step in January. So I'll stop and listen.
Thank you, Matt. So we do have some hands up. Bobby, I saw yours first, then Darren, then Eileen, and then Tamara. So why don't you guys go ahead and ask your questions, and you won't need me to facilitate that. Just
Thanks.
get started, Bobby. Thanks.
Well, thanks. I just wanted to, first, my first question is regarding Vita Health and what messaging the GIC has done to its members, because getting a lot of questions regarding Vita Health, and it seems to me that people don't have the information they need. And I was curious what the communications has been regarding Vita to the membership. If you could talk about that, Matt, a little.
Yeah, I may kick this to some of my colleagues. Erica or Andrew may have more details on this, but my understanding is that earlier this week, member materials have been sent out describing the program and kind of starting to prepare people for the program. And I do just want to say, and maybe Andrew could speak to some of this, that there's, the way it's not as if on January 1st, like there is going to be a super abrupt change, right? That we've worked with Vita to make sure that as we roll out this program, we're doing so thoughtfully, we're doing so in a way that doesn't abruptly change people's care, that we're providing kind of some reasonable accommodations in the transition. So Erica, Andrew, any more you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Vice Chair. So because we're implementing this on kind of a tight timeline, communications, like I said, or like Matt noted, did go out earlier this week. We've been meeting weekly with the VITA implementation team to make sure that we're staying on top of all the communications. We do have through VITA a live landing page now open for the public and a GIC member specific phone number, which we can provide, and that information will be going out to GIC members so that if they have specific questions about VITA, they can call VITA directly and have a direct line specifically for GIC members. So that's some really great progress. And as Matt noted, while the implementation is live on January 1st, there is a 90-day grace period in which folks will continue to get communications encouraging them to do their part in enrolling with Vita Health if they're someone who is already on a GLP-1 for weight loss at this time. Like I said, those communications will be ongoing. Once a member enrolls, those kind of follow-up communications will stop because we don't want to be bothering folks who have already been enrolled and are doing their part. Once you've kind of done your part, you'll come off of those, but you will be continually reminded so that when the 90-day grace period is over, a member doesn't find themselves stuck and getting their prescription denied at the pharmacy. Folks will, if they in that 90-day period, if they don't enroll on time, they will get a denial message at the pharmacy, but it will then direct them back to Vita to make sure that they're doing their enrollment. So like I said, there's that 90-day grace period there.
So first of all, as of yesterday, I've received multiple questions from people that they have no information, and and it's very concerning for all the 17 or 18,000 people who are currently prescribed GLP-1s for weight loss. There's a great deal of panic because January 1st is just a couple of weeks away. People seemingly have no idea what to do. They're not, directed to anything. When they call CVS, unfortunately, they're told that they will not receive their medications. Okay. And some people are really panicking. What's the messaging to CVS? Do we have any idea what CVS is telling people or directing people or just saying, hey, you're not going to be covered? And if we could receive, I'd appreciate, at least for all the labor commissioners, if we could receive the information that is being sent to the membership regarding Vita, how they enroll, what to do so that we can be helpful and direct people accordingly, because people are really beginning to panic. This is the first time I've heard that there's a 90-day grace period, which I'm grateful for, but I don't think people know that. I think people think that if they are not enrolled on January 1st, they will not receive their medication. So I think it's really important for that message to go out at least to the members that, hey, there's a 90-day grace period and you don't have to panic. And I want to make sure that CVS is aware of that as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good point. I do think that's a follow-up for our, the staff, and I do appreciate you bringing it up, Bobby, and potentially you can be on that this week to get back to Bobby and make sure that it's disseminated very strongly so that our members know they're supported, but also know they need to, they need to enroll in order to continue to get benefits. All right.
But if I may, Madam Chair, I'm just going to underscore what the Vice Chair had to say. I'm getting the same information, that no information has been received as of this very morning. And with the impending deadline coming up, there is some understandable concern, if not panic, it just has been stated. So I too would like that information. And I'd like a copy of what was sent out earlier this week because it has not landed in individuals' mailboxes as of this morning.
Yes, yep, and I would just want to let folks know that there is nothing for members to do until January 1st. They won't be able to enroll until January 1st. So that's part of the kind of tight timeline is if we let folks know too early, there wouldn't be anything for them to do in the immediate. It would just, we didn't want to get folks panicked. And this was kind of done in lockstep with VITA. This is how they would normally roll out something like this. So I absolutely understand the concern and the nerves around that. But as I mentioned, I think Monday is when things went out. We did mailers to make sure that, you know, we're getting to folks who may not have email addresses. So we wanted to kind of go the snail mail route, make sure everybody was getting the appropriate information. So that should be hitting mailboxes pretty soon.
Well,
And
if I just might add, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought we had some data before that the likelihood there would be a 50% drop off of people going through the beta program. Am I misunderstanding that percentage? Because the way I look at that, if there's going to be a drop off by having this Vita program, to me that argues that there should be more aggressive communication to the members to understand, what their options are, so that there's not a disproportionate burden on individuals who have no information about what they should do, and that's my concern. On the one hand, if there's going to be an expected drop off, and Vita agrees to that, then it seems to me that they, like others, should be more aggressive in communicating what the process is, so that people are not calling people like us asking us for questions.
absolutely. I'll be sure to get all of the commissioners the contact information and the direct line to VITA so that when you get questions like this, you can provide them with that direct line. There's also an FAQ page that recently went live that is on the VITA landing page. So I'll be sure to get that information to each commissioner. Absolutely hear your concerns, and we'll take them back to our weekly implementation meetings with VITA, at which CVS is also present. So happy to do that and happy to keep you all updated.
Erica, thank you. I'm going to ask Eileen to go because I know she has a hard stop. So go ahead, Eileen.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate you taking me out of turn. So I just want to offer a general comment that I would like to see the solutions for how to reduce costs more aligned with the cost drivers. WTW laid out what we're driving the cost. And so I do think that should be the focus area for where we try to find some savings. It would make the most sense. And the only other thing I would say is, I mean, I know insurance is supposed to, it's about cross subsidy, but in every other form of insurance, if you utilize services more, you do pay more, right? And so I don't think that that's an outrageous thing for us to consider. The other thing, I had asked at the last meeting for some thoughts about more systemic change ideas. In particular, I know a lot of other states are offering plans with reimbursement rates that are tied to a percentage of Medicare. I don't know if there's any information yet you can share on that, but I think
The next agenda item, Commissioner. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Unfortunately,
That's
I'm
okay.
probably not going to be able to do that. But I do think, as the largest purchaser in Massachusetts, maybe New England, we absolutely have to be looking at some more systemic and fundamental changes. And I'm going to keep saying that until the cows come home, because the trend doesn't look like it's changing. I think our demographics are not on our side. And I think, kind of nibbling around the edges here isn't going to get us where we need to go. Thanks.
Thank you, Eileen.
I agree.
Keep talking to us. And providing input. So we just don't want to be talking heads. We want to get things done. All right. I forgot who's next. So Darren, Gonna
Yeah.
call
Darren,
on you and then
Darren's next.
Tamara.
Yeah, so it's really comments around the marketplace on GLP-1 coverage. And Matt indicated it's primarily larger employers that are still offering it as opposed to smaller. And part of that is because the insurers, typically that market and small group is in an insured market. So the insurers have actually just cut the coverage for weight loss. They're still absolutely covering it for diabetes, but just no longer covering it for weight loss. Most carriers in most states have done that in a small group. You also have in the 51 to 99 market, that size group, the carriers were releasing two rate sets, one with and one without GLP-1 coverage. The differential was incredible in total premium. We're talking anywhere between 12 and 18% of total premium. So it was an amazing load that they were putting on the rates to have GLP-1 coverage. And so what's happening is groups that still cover them for weight loss are really almost becoming outliers. And then the largest ones that still cover it, they typically are in financial services, biotech, pharma, and healthcare. Outside of those industries, the coverage rate drops dramatically. So it really kind of comes down to certain size groups and certain industries, and then the largest ones are also cutting deals, to get the drugs at a lower cost, either saying you all have to buy from Novo Nordisk or you all have to buy the Lilly drug, kind of one or the other, but not both, to get more favorable costs. So these things are all going on. The other thing to consider is that Lilly will be releasing their oral format in I think first quarter is their target. That will spike the utilization even further because you have people who've never taken GLP-1s because they're needle phobic, and they're going to come online. And then there'll be a natural shift over. It's not a cost savings. They're releasing it at a similar pricing level, even though the cost to deliver and manufacture is lower for an oral drug. So it's just things to consider, I think. So there's mainly comments, not a question.
Terrific.
Go ahead,
And
Tamara.
I want to follow up. Thank you, Darren. I was going to talk a little bit about what you said, but to build on what Darren was saying, there are new GLP-1 drugs that are being approved all the time. And so the competition is becoming more fierce among the pharmaceutical industries, and some of them are providing significant cost discounts in terms of coupons. And so if there's any way that we can establish a relationship with a drug company that is willing to lower the cost for weight loss, basically for GLP-1s, from that we will buy exclusively from them. And because many times when a physician orders a drug, I know in my case, if a physician tells me I should take this drug, and there are several that are similar, I said, well, I'd like to use X drug from this manufacturer, and they will do it because they're pretty much the same. They're other than the modality of delivery, which is a new thing now with the Lilly drug. They're pretty much the same, so that we can move, just like we have in the hospital world, moving people to less expensive options. We could move people to choose a certain brand of GLP-1 that possibly has an agreement with us or a significant coupon. And there are definitely coupons out there that lower costs tremendously on GLP-1s. You just have to look for it and utilize it.
Thank you, Tamara. Appreciate that. Hey, Anna, why don't you go ahead and take the floor?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say that on the prices, I think there's no real evidence that the prices for the GLP-1s are going to come down anytime soon. There's from what my research has shown is there's excess demand in the market right now for these medications, and so the manufacturers really have no need to lower prices in the short term. And the coupons Tamara, you make a really good point about trying to find the lowest cost drug within a class. And I encourage our members to try to do that in all times. And coupons, though, they can help the member with the co-pays, but the evidence shows that they actually sort of maintain the high total prices for medications or even increase them, because what manufacturers can do is they sort of waive the member's copay with coupon, but then they get the rest of their fee from the self-insured employer. So that's a affordability solution for our members, but not big affordability like for the total spend of the program. So I worry a little bit about relying on that as a solution. I think that Darren's points are also really, really important, that the commercial market is really seeing a pullback on coverage for these medications. I don't know if this is a short-term or a long-term thing, but it's what we're seeing heading into next year.
Thank you, Anna. I do appreciate all of these comments and I love the engagement. I don't see anybody else. So let's move on. I do think to the staff, I thought all of our comments were excellent. I do like how WTW laid out what are the drivers. And so should we have solutions that address them? Like if we could have that laid out at some point, I think it was a really good suggestion because it's logical and maybe logic isn't driving our thinking right now here. But I do like it. So, all right, let's move on. Is this where Margaret's presenting now? We always love hearing from you, Margaret. We love hearing from all the staff.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, really happy to turn it over to Margaret to respond to this inquiry from our commission at the November meeting. And it actually speaks, Madam Chair, to a portion of what you just said about the core drivers. And we want to start to dig into these with you. We've been doing a great deal of work in this space. And we're going to start today with provider prices as the core driver and look to continue this discussion as we go forward on other areas. So happy to turn it to Margaret.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, commissioners. Could we go to the next slide, please? All right, I am thrilled to be here talking about this topic today. Let's get into it. Provider price caps. First, I want to do a level set on what we mean by provider price caps. You may hear a number of interchangeable terms on the subject, such as Medicare reference-based pricing and price ceilings. These terms refer to the practice of setting a limit on the maximum amount a medical service can be reimbursed for, or a cap. Generally, we talk about capping reimbursements at a percentage of the Medicare fee schedule. Medicare has different reimbursement rates for each state and a number of other adjustments that I'm not going to go into. But it's important to understand that these rates are developed by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services at the federal level and take into account myriad aspects of the cost of providing health care. Most fee-for-service contracts between providers and carriers are negotiated on a percentage of Medicare basis. You can really think of it as the lingua franca of healthcare reimbursement. As you are all aware, the primary driver of medical inflation is increasing provider prices. Many studies and reports, including the most recent cost trends report from the Health Policy Commission, released just last week, have shown that high relative prices and increases are driven not by quality, but by provider market power. In this presentation, I am going to provide the overview you requested on other states that have implemented price caps and what their policies look like. Then we will discuss the Massachusetts market landscape and what lessons to consider from the other states' price cap policies. Next slide, please. All right, state spotlight. First, to orient everyone to this slide, the left column shows the state with a price cap policy, as well as the year enacted and, if applicable, the year the policy was repealed or the program was shut down. The middle column shows the market sectors that the cap applies to and what percentage of Medicare the cap was set. And the third column shows if the policy was implemented through legislation, regulation, or administratively. In the appendix of this slide deck, we have more written details on each of these states' policies. Before we run through each price caps initiative, I want to draw your attention to the fact that 4 of the 7 states listed here passed legislation in 2025. This shows that price cap policies are gaining traction now in the face of both healthcare and economy-wide affordability concerns. But since the majority of these policies are also very new, we don't yet have the benefit of their evaluation. However, what evaluations we've seen from Oregon and Montana are very promising in terms of savings achieved, the sustainability of hospital finances under this policy, and the lack of unintended consequences of the policy, like cost shifting to other commercial plans. The third column shows how the policy was enacted, whether through, legislation. I went over that already. All right, let me jump in. Washington State. 2025, Washington passed legislation limiting how much state employees and teachers plan, essentially the GIC equivalent, how much they pay for inpatient and outpatient services to no more than 200% or double the Medicare reimbursement rate for in-network services and no more than 185% of Medicare for out-of-network service, effective January 1st, 2027. The legislation also established minimum payment levels for primary care and behavioral health services delivered in the community to at least 150% of the Medicare rate. Washington also has a public option on its exchange with a maximum statewide aggregate spending target of 160% of Medicare. Moving to Oregon, they legislatively enacted price caps in 2017 for the state's employee and teachers plan. The policy was implemented in 2019. Reimbursements are limited to a cap of 200% of Medicare for in-network hospitals. And in the first 27 months of the policy's implementation, it saved the state more than $107 million, or 4% of planned spending, while only applying to 24 of the state's 62 hospitals. One recent study in Health Affairs showed no cost shifting to other plans in the commercial market to make up for lost revenue. Vermont passed legislation establishing upper limits on the amount that hospitals can accept as payment for healthcare services. This is based on a percentage of Medicare again. This is for the entire commercial market for both fully and self-insured plans. These payment limits must be established in regulation by hospital fiscal year 2027. The law also directs Vermont's Green Mountain Care Board to ensure that savings are passed along to ratepayers through lower insurance premiums and to report on this annually. Indiana. They legislatively passed a commercial market price cap this year in 2025, containing 2 price caps policies. One policy requires nonprofit hospitals in the state's largest systems, based on patient service revenue of $2 billion or more, to bring their aggregate average inpatient and outpatient prices under the statewide average by 2029. If any nonprofit health system spending in aggregate is above the statewide average, they will lose their nonprofit status for at least a year, with their status reinstated once spending comes in below the target. Obviously this has enormous tax implications and is a strong incentive. The second policy requires the state's largest nonprofit hospitals to offer direct-to-employer contracting arrangements with price caps set at or below 260% of Medicare's reimbursement rate for inpatient and outpatient services. Montana enacted price caps in 2016 for the state and school-based employee health plan. Reimbursement rates were capped at 220 to 225% of Medicare for rates for inpatient services and 230 to 250% for outpatient services. The legislation achieved $47.8 million in savings in the first 3 years. The price caps were repealed in 2022 following a gubernatorial transition when the state selected a different TPA for the employee health plan. North Carolina. For North Carolina, the state's employee health plan was called the Clear Pricing Project. It's a program that was voluntary for providers, and it ended this year, 2025. PCPs and behavioral health providers were paid more than typical contracted rates under this program. Other services were capped and reimbursed at lower than typical market rates, and providers with contracted rates above the cap opted out because it was voluntary. They were unwilling to take a lower rate, even despite of the employee plan holding the largest employer market share in the state. They did not achieve savings, and again, the program ended this year. And finally, on my blitzkrieg tour of states with price cap policies, we've got New Mexico. New Mexico passed legislation to authorize hospital price caps in the state employee health plan for urban hospitals located in counties that have a population of 125,000 or more. As of July 1st, the New Mexico Healthcare Authority no longer reimburses urban in-network hospitals more than 200% and out-of-network hospitals more than 175% of what Medicare would pay for the same service. Okay, you take a breath. That was a very high-level overview of price caps in 7 states, each of which could merit their own presentation. Before I move on and discuss the Massachusetts market, any clarifying questions? I know we're running low on time, so I don't want to spend a lot of time here.
No, let's move on to Massachusetts.
Okay,
That's
all
great.
right. Moving forward. Next slide, please. Lessons learned from other states. So as I pointed out, North Carolina was the only state that implemented their price caps program administratively through contracts. The primary reason that the program failed was providers could opt out of these contracts. Providers whose Medicare relativity was above the program's cap did just that. Of course, legislation supporting price caps in Massachusetts would require substantial stakeholder engagement. On to hospital finance landscape. There are stories in the Globe, at least weekly, concerning the state of hospital finances in Massachusetts. Who is threatening layoffs? What parties are not going to reach an agreement on contract terms? What hospital is in jeopardy of closing down? It can be hard to make sense of the financial state of industry partners. Painting with a broad brushstroke, I would like to say that in Massachusetts, the larger nonprofit health systems tend to have robust finances, whereas independent community hospitals are struggling. It's a haves and have-not story. So let's talk a little more in depth about hospital finances. There's considerable nuance here that goes far beyond any hospital's operating margin. To truly evaluate the state of hospitals' finances, their reserves, age of plant, capital expenditures, solvency, liquidity, and still other financial measures must be evaluated together. For example, we know that the FY24 audited financial statements, reading through those, we know that Mass General Brigham's operating margin in FY24 was 0.2%. If you anchor to that metric, you may be concerned about the system's financial health, but contextualizing that along a variety of financial metrics, like their $13 billion in reserves and a non-operating margin of 8.9%, the picture begins to shift. And as the slide says, just because a hospital is losing money doesn't mean that they are underpaid. Hospitals may come out of a year in the red, but as a hypothetical, when you look deeper, you will see that their capital expenditures were high, perhaps due to the purchase of expensive equipment that will develop or enhance high-margin service lines. Systems may also point to financial losses or low margins, but again, when you look closer, the losses may be due to expenditures associated with expanding their footprint and increasing their market power. Pursuing a price caps policy in Massachusetts will require thoughtful analysis of each system's and independent hospital's financial status. A policy can be constructed that protects the viability of hospitals that are truly struggling. So policy work for the GIC. We are seeing a groundswell of interest in price caps across the country. It's no different in Massachusetts, where the recent Massachusetts Association of Health Plans conference featured in-depth discussion on this policy proposal. And given where we're at with the budget and knowing that prices are the primary driver of ever-increasing medical costs, it would be irresponsible for us not to look at capping prices at the GIC. So what do we have in the hopper? In 2026, our analytics team has a number of modeling projects on deck associated with price caps. We will be looking at savings to the budget associated with GIC price caps set at various levels, which providers would see a material reduction in revenue if we capped GIC rates, and what percentage of each system's revenue would be lost due to a GIC cap. We will pair the modeling results with a comprehensive analysis of systems' audited financial statements and bond rating statements. These analyses should be central to stakeholder discussions about our market's capacity to absorb price caps. And with that, I'd like to turn the conversation over to the Commission for discussion.
Thanks, Margaret. Would you just do me the favor of that? Okay, so for those people whose screen might look like mine, this last box says the policy work that you're doing in 26 for the GIC. It's a little wonky on my screen.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay.
That's right.
So I see Darren has his hand up. I want to ask a question first, if that's okay, Darren, to piggyback on what you said, Margaret. So this is the work that you're going to be doing very thoughtfully. What resources do you need to do that work effectively and expediently, but also thoughtfully? Do you have all the resources you need from a people, WTW? What resources do you need, and what do you need from us? And Dana has her hand up, so maybe she's going to offer all the resources you need.
Thank you. I appreciate that question, of course. I have worked it out between my team and additional support that we have. We can get this work done.
Good. All right. Dana, you put your hand up when I was asking that, so go ahead, and then Darren, I'll let you go.
I just want to sort of reiterate what Margaret was saying at the end, which is like, this is a really complicated problem. And I think we want to make sure that we are doing the analysis and taking the time to understand the implications and all of the stakeholders involved here. And so I think that it's great we're talking about it now. I would like to advise the Commission to be thoughtful in how we proceed, and that likely this is a multi-year conversation and not necessarily a solution to the budget problem we're currently facing.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah, just to emphasize that, sorry, Darren, we keep kicking you back here. This is an initiative that I think, as Margaret said, those that were done in other states successfully involve a great deal of collaboration and dialogue, working with other stakeholders in state government, outside of state government, and other stakeholders in the healthcare industry, which we know is facing some generally challenging times. So I just want to emphasize that this is a direction that we could go, but we can't go by ourselves, right? And we need to do it thoughtfully and carefully with others.
Thanks, Matt. Darren, you have the floor.
Actually, this type of thing does take, it's multi-year, I think, and there's a lot that goes into it. Be significant member impact on these types of programs too. But one of the things I was thinking, Margaret, when you were going through that, you talked about the impact on private market. I'm not sure if any of those states have near the population as a percentage of total population in their state plan. So just thinking about the GIC, if you look at Massachusetts, you got roughly 7 million people here. Over 2 million right off the top are either on Medicare or Mass Health programs.
Yep.
So now we're down below 5 million already. GIC, 400 to 450,000 members. You're talking 8 to 9% of the population is in this plan. So if you take that amount of people and suddenly they're paying providers at a lower amount, I would argue we have a bigger chance for provider impact here that could impact the private market than those other states that were listed.
If I could respond to that.
Sure.
Yes, we are about 7% of the total population. We do have a high Medicaid coverage rate, so we're not directly comparable to a state like North Carolina. But I mathed it out yesterday when I was preparing for this presentation. We saw with North Carolina, with no legislation, the largest employer plan in the state, they have about 6% of the total population. And so they're roughly comparable, although they implemented administratively, giving providers the option to opt in or opt out. They opted out. So some of the evaluations, I think there is overlap and things that we can take from it. I will concede that we'd have different market dynamics, but not. I think
healthcare is a
overall,
percentage of our economy too.
And that's a very important consideration.
Yeah.
But I think overall, really, what the financial, the audited financials, the story that tells, paired with the modeling that we're doing around how much money we will save, which is also someone else's revenue reduction, and what percentage of that system's reduction we actually account for. I think that'll really shine a very bright light on what exactly we're talking about in terms of financial impact for our market.
Thank you. Great analysis. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, loved how you had that answer, Margaret. Great. Go ahead, Tamara. You got the floor. You might still be on mute.
Yeah, Dean was first. Dean was first.
Tamara, I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay, good. A couple of things. I assume this does not address the pharmaceutical issues that we were discussing. At least I don't see it.
That's right.
So that's a whole different discussion.
It's a different discussion, which we will have in 2026.
Right. And Margaret, this is you did a great job on this. But the question that I have is, because numbers do matter.
Yeah.
And have any of the other states possibly partnered with private insurers in terms of their negotiation with providers and the legislature to facilitate these caps? Have they partnered at all with the private market in the insurance business?
So, I think these, just glancing at this, I'm shy about saying all of them because I'm an analytics professional and I want to verify that, but I would venture that all of them are working through private health plans, or essentially they're TPAs. So they're administering a self-insured fee schedule. And this would be a matter of a GIC specific fee schedule that caps rates at a certain percentage, say 200% of Medicare. So I would imagine that's how this would be executed. Does that answer your question?
No. So what I'm saying is that the private insurers are hurting also. Of course, they're private businesses, so they do have incentive to possibly benefit from this kind of a cap. And so I was wondering if they opt in to work with the GIC in negotiating with providers and the legislature to achieve certain caps. It's just a bigger force in numbers, that's all.
Yeah, I think, I think that the fact that the Massachusetts Association of Health Plan, at their recent conference, there were about 1,000 people in the room. They really featured price caps as a affordability solution. I think that it's a very strong signal that health plans would be very interested in participating in this space.
Okay.
I think just quickly, if I can respond, I think that is sort of outside the purview of our commission, but something that would be interesting as we have these conversations to talk across state government as we continue to see healthcare cost trends increase, that would be sort of a broader conversation that would need some time and engagement across multiple stakeholders outside of just our commissioners.
That's right. And Tamara, if I'm understanding, are you asking a question about a statewide cap?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I would point to Rhode Island. They have a slightly different setup with a growth cap that limits how much the increase can be, and that is statewide. That, as Dana said, that is out of our purview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dean, go ahead. You've got the floor.
Not a lot to add. Just thanks for this initiative. I think this is enormously helpful. My research doesn't really bear on this, but I did speak to the person who was kind of responsible for driving this policy in Montana. And so I was just kind of intrigued about how it works. And look, in terms of providers, this is going to potentially present advantages to some, but it would obviously affect, margins for other kind of significant, players in the health sector market. But I think that in the longer term, we have to begin to look at these things, because otherwise, the commission will be essentially making the best choices among pretty bad options for our members. So I just want to commend the team for doing this, and I look forward to what the analysis reveals.
That's good comment. All right. I don't see any other questions, so let's move on to the final 8 minutes. Jennifer, we're giving you so much time here to review our CFO report. But go ahead, you have the floor, and appreciate how quickly you've come up to speed as our CFO. So let's have you go.
Wonderful. Good morning, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here. Next week marks the end of my 3rd month at the GIC, and it has certainly been a busy onboarding time as we've been working to close out FY 2025, begin tracking FY 2026, and start forecasting FY 2027. As we all know, with the GIC, each year impacts the following year, and that is especially true for FY 2025 and FY 26. We will review a few of those impacts today. If you could go to the next slide, please. So at the November Commission meeting, we spoke about a known funding exposure due to final budget levels for the main GIC account, and because of which we took administrative action to curb spending, which we're implementing Vita Health for GLP-1s and a drug savings review program. And that's the 20 million in savings you see there. That since the November meeting, 2 additional areas of budget exposure have surfaced that we wanted to bring to the Commission's attention. The first area relates to one of the GIC's funding sources, the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund, or SRBTF for those who like to keep track of those acronyms. And the SRBTF is a rough proxy for state spending on retiree benefits and has traditionally been funded at $550 million. The final FY26 budget funded the SRBTF at $450 million, leaving a gap of $100 million. That gap has been partially filled by dedicating a portion of the FY25 and FY26 excess capital gains revenues to the SRBTF, most recently via a section in the FY25 final closeout SEP, but a gap of $42 million remains, and that's what you're seeing here on the slide. The second area relates to a carry forward effect of the GIC's FY25 supplemental budget. As you are all aware, the GIC is funded from 2 main sources: the state budget, which funds the employer share of health claim expenses, and the enrollee account, which captures premium contribution from active employees and retirees. When the GIC pays invoices, those are routinely split between the 2 accounts. It's important to note that the only way to update the enrollee revenue stream is to increase premiums, which is done once per year per our statute. There is no other way to replenish the account, so the state is responsible for covering any shortfall. But that hasn't been a problem since the account has routinely maintained ample resources. That is until FY 2025. Unfortunately, the $240 million deficit in FY25 was only calculated for the employer side of the accounts. It did not anticipate that the enrollee account would have difficulty meeting its obligations and would be depleted before the year end. However, because of the overall size of the FY25 shortfall, the employee account was not able to absorb its share of spending and ended FY25 with a $54 million deficit, which will now need to be made up in FY26. In fact, July invoices were only paid from the state account as an initial approach to rebalance the two sides. In a few slides, you will see that resulted in a sizable funding gap in July on the state accounts. So that leaves us with an identified funding exposure of $153 million. We've been working with administration and finance to ensure that they are aware and are incorporating these exposures into their overall budget planning. We're also working to update spending projections for the year, and we'll need a little more time and additional data before we're ready to present those, but we will plan to bring them to a future commission meeting. That was a lot of information, and I'm happy to take questions, or I can continue on to show you how the spending has been shaking out in the initial months.
Yeah, I think we need to keep moving, and I don't see any questions. So let's see what the first few months have looked like, Jennifer.
Good. All right. If you could move to the next slide. Thank you. So this table is the traditional monthly spending report for the state budget accounts, representing the employer share of spending. As noted earlier, while July spending tends to be a little larger than an average month, that is even more so in FY26, since we purposely spent from the state account to allow time for the enrollee account to be recapitalized. So moving on to the next slide, this is the same report, but for the enrollee side of the ledger. Note that July spending in most health claim rows is 0. And that again is so that we would allow time for the account to be recapitalized. And we will revisit this rebalancing over the course of the year. Going to the next slide. This shows the projected spending of currently available funding across the months. Actual spending is layered behind the budget levels to provide further context. As noted, the July spending was substantially higher due to the need to offset shortfalls in the enrollee account. The fluctuations between budget and spending by month reflect seasonality in health spending, as well as the ebbs and flows of pharmacy rebates and CMS credits for our Medicare population. And again, this is the state share alone. It is not the combined budget. Going to the next slide, this extends the budget projections through June, showing the month-to-month fluctuations in budget and ending in June with a slightly smaller forecast due to anticipated pharmacy rebates. And then in the final slide, it shows the cumulative effects of the monthly budgets, similar to what has been shown in the past. So I look forward to making further refinements on these charts in the months to come, and I welcome your feedback and questions.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure that there's lots we could continue to discuss, Jennifer. The trend is not pretty, and we appreciate you jumping in, owning this trend. But I don't see any other questions or comments. A little bit sobering. We have good work ahead to be done. All right, well, thank you very much. I think that concludes the meeting, meat of the meeting. I don't see any other business. So no one's raising any other business. I don't have any. All I want to do is wish you all a very happy holiday season, a good new year. Let's ask our staff to rest up. They're going to have lots of work to do in the new year. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, I think second and third. Okay. And so then all in favor of adjourning and resting up until next year, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a great calendar year, and we'll see you next year. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays,
Happy
everyone.
holidays.